She said, "We're better as friends," while swirling wine in her glass like this was just another casual Tuesday conversation. The irony wasn't lost on me that Olivia had orchestrated this entire evening, candles flickering around our Denver loft, my favorite osso buco from that little Italian place on 16th Street, even the playlist I'd made for our first anniversary humming softly in the background. I watched her rehearse this moment in my mind, probably practicing in the bathroom mirror while I was at work, perfecting that wounded but brave expression she wore now. 3 years together, and she was handing me this line like it was some kind of gift. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face as she waited for my reaction. There was nervous energy buzzing beneath her skin, her foot tapping against the hardwood floor in that pattern I knew meant she was expecting something specific. She wanted tears, maybe some begging, definitely anger, anything to prove this whole thing mattered enough to destroy me. "Okay," I said simply, taking another sip of the Burlo she'd spent way too much money on. "If that's what you want." Her eyebrows twitched slightly. "That wasn't the script. You're too much sometimes, Trevor," she continued, words tumbling out faster now. "I need space to breathe, to figure myself out." The way she said it sounded rehearsed, like she'd been practicing this speech for weeks. I nodded slowly, watching as she shifted uncomfortably under my silence. "I'll always love you," she added, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand with that old comforting gesture that used to mean everything. Just not like that. Now it just felt like she was trying to soothe her own guilt. I slid my hand out from under hers, my voice staying calm even to my own ears. "I get it. No hard feelings." Her face did something complicated, surprise, then irritation, maybe even disappointment. She'd wanted a scene, wanted to be the one walking away from tears and pleading. Instead, she was getting acceptance, and it was throwing her completely off balance. "You're taking this really well," she said, accusation creeping into her tone. I shrugged, already mentally calculating how we'd split the lease. "What's there to take badly? You said we're better as friends." "I believe you." The wine glass clinked as she set it down too hard. "It's just, I expected you to fight for us." Now I almost laughed. "You're breaking up with me and mad I'm not arguing about it?" Her cheeks flushed red. "I just thought what we had meant more to you." "It did," I said simply. "But I'm not going to beg someone to stay who wants to leave." She opened her mouth, closed it again, gears turning as she tried to figure out how to regain control of a situation where she'd suddenly realized she might have miscalculated. Finally, she stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "I guess that's that then." "I guess so." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. "Want me to help you pack tonight, or would you rather do it tomorrow? I can call my buddy Mike to bring his truck if you need help moving the bigger stuff." She stared at me like I'd suggested we burn down the apartment. "You're already planning my move out?" "Well, yeah. Friends don't usually live together, right? Plus the lease is month to month, so it makes sense to handle this efficiently." I found Mike's number and showed her the screen. "He owes me a favor anyway." "This isn't how this was supposed to go," she muttered, grabbing her purse. "Really? How was it supposed to go?" But she was already heading for the door, probably expecting me to chase after her with apologies and promises to change. Instead, I called Mike. "Hey, man, remember that time you needed help moving your piano? Well, I need that favor back." After she left, I sat there for exactly 10 minutes, letting the reality settle over me. Then I cleared the table, put away the expensive wine, and ordered pad thai from our usual place. If I was going to be single again, I might as well start enjoying the things she'd always complained about. The text started exactly 48 hours later, like she'd been watching a timer. "Hey, just realized I still have access to our Netflix account. Oh, should I change the password or do you want to handle it?" I responded 3 hours later with login information for her own account that I'd already set up. Then came the coffee text. "Walked past Grind Coffee this morning and thought about our Sunday ritual. The barista asked where you were." I knew for a fact that Maria, the weekend barista, barely spoke English and had never once acknowledged either of us beyond taking our order. I texted back, "Hope you enjoyed your latte." What I didn't mention was that I'd already switched to the place 2 blocks over, where they made better espresso anyway. By day 4, the coincidental encounters started. I'm coming out of peak performance climbing gym after my Tuesday session when Olivia appears in the parking lot, wearing brand new climbing shoes that still had tags attached. "Trevor, what are the odds?" She laughed a little too loudly. "I've been thinking about getting back into climbing. You always said I should try it more seriously." I'd actually said the opposite, that she complained too much about her manicures getting ruined, but I wasn't about to correct her revisionist history. "Jake inside can help you get started with the basics." I nodded toward the gym entrance. "He's great with beginners." Her smile faltered when she realized I wasn't offering to be her personal instructor and reunion facilitator. "Maybe we could grab coffee after and you could give me some tips." "I've got plans, but Jake really knows his stuff. Have fun." I drove away while she stood there in those ridiculous new shoes, probably wondering why her grand gesture had fallen flat. The farmer's market encounter 2 days later was even more transparent. I'm examining heirloom tomatoes when she materializes beside me with an empty reusable bag, acting like she'd been shopping there for years instead of complaining about dirty hippie vegetables every time I'd suggested we go together. "Trevor, I've been trying to eat healthier lately. What would you recommend?" I gestured toward the vendor. "Jim here grows great produce. He can tell you what's in season." Then I paid for my tomatoes and walked away, leaving her to figure out the difference between a rutabaga and a turnip. But the most desperate move came during my lunch break at the office. I'm walking out of the building when I spot her sitting on the bench across the street, scrolling through her phone with exaggerated casualness. When she sees me, she jumps up and waves like we're old friends who haven't seen each other in years. "I was just in the neighborhood for a client meeting," she calls out, jogging across the street in heels that clearly weren't designed for pavement navigation. "Thought I'd say hi if I saw you." My office is in a business district surrounded by tech companies and accounting firms. Olivia worked in event planning for a wedding venue in Cherry Creek, 20 minutes away. There was literally no reason for her to be in this neighborhood unless she was following my lunch schedule. "That's nice," I said. "How'd the meeting go?" "Really well, actually. We might be planning a corporate retreat here." She gestured vaguely at the nearest building, which housed a tax preparation service and a physical therapy clinic. "Anyway, want to grab lunch? I know you usually eat around now." The fact that she knew my exact lunch timing should have been creepy, but mostly it was just sad. "I already ate," I lied, holding up the energy bar I'd grabbed from my desk drawer. "Maybe another time." I watched her face cycle through confusion, frustration, and something that looked like panic before settling on fake cheerfulness. "Of course. I should get back anyway." That night, my phone buzzed with a text that felt like a test. "Saw the funniest thing today that reminded me of that inside joke we had about your coworker's terrible coffee breath. Remember how we used to call him Dragon Dave behind his back?" Faced with tears of joy, I stared at the message for a long moment, remembering how mean-spirited those jokes had felt even then, how I'd gone along with them to keep her happy. Now they just seemed cruel. I didn't respond at all. 3 days later, another test. Connor and I went to that new rooftop bar downtown. Posted some pics. "The view is incredible. You should check it out sometime." I liked the post without commenting, the same way I'd like a distant colleague's vacation photos. Generic, polite acknowledgement without any deeper engagement. What she didn't know was that I'd been to that same rooftop bar the week before, with Ashley, my climbing instructor, who'd suggested we grab drinks after she'd helped me finally master that 5.9 route I'd been struggling with. We'd talked about everything except my ex-girlfriend, and I'd realized how long it had been since I'd had a conversation that energized me instead of draining me. I kept that information to myself, of course. Olivia didn't need to know that I was already building something new while she was still trying to resurrect something dead. The first emergency came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. My phone buzzed with Olivia's name lighting up the screen, followed immediately by a text. "Trevor, I'm so sorry to bother you, but my car broke down in the worst part of town and I'm scared. Can you please come get me? I don't know who else to call." 6 months ago, I would have thrown on clothes and driven across the city without question. Now I checked her location on the Find My Friends app. We'd never bothered to disconnect. She was at Connor's apartment building in Cherry Creek, one of the safest neighborhoods in Denver. I texted back, "That sucks. Here's the number for Rocky Mountain Towing. They're 24/7 and really reliable, 303-555-0199. Maybe call Connor for emotional support while you wait." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before she responded. "Connor's not answering his phone. I really need someone I trust right now. I'm sure he'll call you back soon. AAA is also a good option if you have coverage. Stay safe." I turned my phone to silent and went back to sleep. The next morning brought a follow-up text. "Thanks for all the help last night." Face with rolling eyes, I ended up having to figure it out myself. I almost responded with something about how adults generally do figure things out themselves, but decided silence was more effective. 2 weeks later, the stakes escalated. "Trevor, I hate to ask this, but something terrible happened. Someone broke into my apartment last night and I can't stop shaking. The police said it'll take hours to process everything and I don't feel safe staying here alone. Could I crash on your couch just for tonight? I promise I won't make it weird." This time I didn't check her location immediately. Instead, I called the non-emergency line for Denver PD and asked if there had been any break-ins reported in her building. The officer told me they'd had no calls from that address in the past week. "That's really scary," I texted back. "Did you contact building security? They should have cameras and can probably get you in touch with the property management company about changing your locks. Also, make sure you file a police report for insurance purposes." Building security said they can't do anything until morning. I really just need a friend right now. Have you tried calling your sister? I know you two are close. Also, most hotels have late check-in if you need somewhere safe to stay tonight. The desperate phone call came an hour later. "Trevor, please. I know things are weird between us, but I'm legitimately scared and Connor's out of town for work. I just need one night on your couch and I'll be gone in the morning. Olivia, we're not together anymore. It's not appropriate for you to stay at my place. Call your sister, check into a hotel, or stay with Ashley from work. You have options. I can't afford a hotel right now and my sister lives in Colorado Springs. Please, I'm not asking as your ex. I'm asking as your friend. Friends don't manipulate each other with fake emergencies." The line went quiet for a long moment. "You think I'm lying? I think you're lonely and looking for an excuse to recreate our old dynamic. But that dynamic doesn't exist anymore." She hung up without saying goodbye. Over the next month, the emergencies became more creative and frequent. Her credit card was supposedly stolen while she was grocery shopping. Could I Venmo her money for essentials? I sent her the customer service number for her bank. She claimed to have food poisoning and needed someone to bring her soup and medicine. I suggested DoorDash and reminded her that pharmacies deliver now. She even tried the classic, "I'm locked out of my apartment and the locksmith can't come until morning" routine, which I countered with the phone number for 3 different 24-hour locksmith services. But the most pathetic attempt came when she called crying about having a panic attack at 2 a.m., claiming she needed to hear a familiar voice to calm down. "That sounds really difficult," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Have you considered calling a crisis hotline? They're trained for exactly this kind of situation and they're available all night. The number is 1-800-273-8255. I don't want to talk to a stranger. I want to talk to you. Olivia, I'm not your emotional support system anymore. You made that clear when you said we should be friends. But friends help each other during emergencies. Real friends, but you don't want friendship. You want me to come running every time you snap your fingers. That's not friendship, that's manipulation." The truth was, I knew most of these weren't real emergencies because her social media told a different story. While she was texting me about being scared and alone, her Instagram showed her at bars with Connor, at dinner parties with coworkers, at yoga classes and wine tastings. She wasn't isolated or helpless. She was bored and missing the attention I used to give her. The final straw came when she tried to recreate one of our old traditions. "Remember how we used to stay up all night talking about everything and nothing? I miss those conversations. Want to grab coffee and catch up properly? I feel like we never really talked after the breakup." "We talked," I replied. "You said we were better as friends." I agreed. What else is there to discuss? I meant we should actually be friends, Trevor. Not whatever this cold shoulder thing is. This is what friendship looks like with me. I'm polite, I'm civil, but I don't provide emotional labor or crisis management services. If you want deep conversations and midnight phone calls, call someone you're actually dating. She never responded to that text, but the location services on my phone showed her parked outside my building for 3 hours that night. I closed the blinds and went to bed early. The public meltdown happened at Jessica's birthday party, 3 months after the breakup. I almost didn't go, knowing Olivia would be there, but Jessica was a good friend and I wasn't about to let my ex dictate my social life. I walked into the rooftop bar expecting awkward small talk, maybe some pointed questions about why we weren't together anymore. What I didn't expect was Olivia cornering me by the appetizer table in front of half our friend group, tears already streaming down her face like she'd been warming up for this performance. "Trevor, we need to talk," she said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You've been completely ignoring me and I don't understand why you're being so cruel." I glanced around at Jessica, Mike, Sarah from our book club, and a few other people who were now staring at us with uncomfortable expressions. "We're at Jessica's party, Olivia. Maybe this isn't the best time or place." "When is the best time? You won't answer my calls, you barely respond to my texts, you act like I don't exist. We said we'd be friends and friends don't abandon each other like this." Her voice cracked on the word, abandon, and I could see she was going for maximum sympathy from our audience. I took a sip of my beer, staying calm. "I haven't abandoned you. I've been polite and civil every time we've interacted." "Polite and civil?" She laughed bitterly. "You treat me like I'm some random stranger you met once at a conference. We were together for 3 years, Trevor. 3 years. That has to mean something." "It did mean something," I said quietly. "But you're the one who said we were better as friends. I'm just treating you like the friend you said you wanted to be. This isn't friendship." Her voice rose higher, drawing more attention from across the party. "Friends care about each other. Friends are there for each other. Friends don't become emotionless robots who respond to emergencies with phone numbers and website links." Mike shifted uncomfortably beside me, and I could see Jessica hovering nearby, probably trying to figure out if she needed to intervene. "Olivia, friends also respect boundaries. They don't manufacture crises to get attention. They don't show up at each other's workplaces uninvited. They don't expect constant emotional availability." "I never manufactured anything. And what's wrong with wanting to see you? What's wrong with missing someone who used to be the most important person in your life?" "The most important person in my life." Past tense. She'd said it herself without realizing it. "There's nothing wrong with missing someone," I said. "But what you're describing isn't friendship. You want me to be your emotional support system while you date other people. That's not fair to me, and it's not healthy for you." "I'm not dating Connor," she protested, even though everyone at this party had seen her Instagram posts from their weekend in Aspen. "And even if I was, that doesn't mean I don't care about you. People can care about more than one person at a time." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "And I care about you enough to not enable this behavior. What you're doing isn't moving forward, it's staying stuck in the past and trying to drag me back there with you." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "So that's it? 3 years together and you just, nothing? You feel nothing?" "I feel like we had something good that ran its course. I feel like you made a decision that was probably right for both of us. And I feel like you're making this harder than it needs to be because you can't accept that some things end." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone within earshot was pretending to be fascinated by their drinks or the city skyline, but I could feel them listening to every word. "You're cruel," she whispered, fresh tears starting. "You're heartless and cruel, and I don't know how I ever thought I loved someone so cold." "I'm not cruel, Olivia. I'm just not giving you what you want. There's a difference." She looked around desperately at our friends, maybe hoping someone would defend her or tell me I was being unreasonable. Instead, she found a circle of people who were clearly uncomfortable with her public breakdown. "You all think he's right, don't you?" she said, voice getting shrill. "You all think I'm being crazy and dramatic." Jessica finally stepped in. "Hey, Maybe we should take this somewhere more private? No. Olivia cut her off. I want everyone to see who Trevor really is. I want them to know that the guy they think is so nice and stable is actually capable of completely cutting someone out of his life like they never mattered. Olivia, Mike said gently, maybe you should go home and— I'm fine, she snapped. I'm the only one here being honest about anything. The rest of you are just pretending this is normal behavior. She turned back to me, mascara smudged and hands shaking. I hope you're happy, Trevor. I hope this is exactly the life you wanted. It is actually, I said. I hope you find what you're looking for too. She stared at me for another long moment, probably waiting for me to crack, to show some emotion that she could latch onto. When I didn't, she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit. The party resumed slowly after she left, but I could feel the shift in energy. A few people approached me with careful expressions, the kind you wear when you're not sure if someone just got dumped or revealed to be a serial killer. That seemed intense, Sarah said diplomatically. She's having a hard time with the transition, I replied. It happens. But over the next hour, something interesting happened. People started opening up to me about things they'd noticed but never said. Jessica mentioned that Olivia had always been a little dramatic, but it had gotten worse over the past year. Mike admitted he'd wondered why I seemed so tired all the time when we were together. Sarah said she'd always felt like she was walking on eggshells around Olivia because any comment could trigger a meltdown or guilt trip. I honestly thought you guys breaking up might be the best thing for you, Mike said quietly. She was kind of a lot. And not in a good way. What I didn't learn until later was that while I was having these revelations about my ex, Connor was having his own awakening. Apparently, Olivia had spent the entire Uber ride home from the party ranting about me, demanding that Connor validate her feelings and agree that I was heartless. Instead, he'd started asking questions about why she was so obsessed with someone who clearly didn't want to be with her. By the time they got to her apartment, Connor had decided he wasn't interested in being anyone's second choice. She texted me about it 2 days later. Connor broke up with me. Said I was still in love with you and he didn't want to compete with a ghost. Hope you're satisfied. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't anything. I was just relieved that someone else finally saw what I'd been dealing with for months. The stalking started subtly, like everything else with Olivia. First, it was just her showing up at peak performance during my usual Tuesday and Thursday climbing sessions. She'd wave from across the gym, maybe ask Jake about beginner routes loud enough for me to hear, but never approach directly. I mentioned it to Ashley during one of our sessions and she just laughed. She's really committed to this whole getting back into climbing thing, isn't she? Ashley had a way of finding humor in situations that would stress most people out. Should I be worried about the competition? I shook my head. Trust me, you have nothing to worry about. But Olivia's presence at the gym became more disruptive. She'd time her visits to coincide with mine, then spend the entire session watching me instead of actually climbing. When Ashley was coaching me through a particularly challenging route, I could feel Olivia's eyes boring into us from across the room. She even started asking other climbers questions about my technique, my progress, whether I'd been coming there long. Jake eventually pulled me aside. Look, man, I don't want to get involved in personal drama, but your ex is making some of the other members uncomfortable. She's asking a lot of questions about you and not doing much actual climbing. I switched to the REI climbing wall across town, figuring she'd eventually get bored and move on. Instead, she showed up there too within a week. That's when I realized she wasn't just coincidentally interested in the same hobbies, she was actively tracking my movements. The workplace incidents were harder to ignore. Olivia started appearing in the lobby of my office building during lunch hours, claiming she was meeting clients in the area. My building housed 3 software companies, an architecture firm, and a marketing agency. Unless she dramatically changed career paths, there was no legitimate reason for her to be there. The first time, I thought it really might be a coincidence. The third time, I mentioned it to building security. She says she's here for business meetings. I explained to Marcus, the security guard I'd gotten to know over the past 2 years. But I'm pretty sure she's just trying to run into me. Marcus nodded knowingly. Ex-girlfriend? Something like that. We see this more than you'd think. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye out. The next time Olivia appeared in the lobby, Marcus politely asked to see her visitor badge or meeting confirmation. When she couldn't produce either, he suggested she contact the specific company she was supposedly meeting with to get properly checked in. She left quickly after that, but not before shooting me a look through the glass doors that was pure venom. Then she got creative. I started receiving deliveries at work, expensive coffee from a local roaster, energy bars from brands I'd mentioned liking, even a new climbing harness that must have cost $200. Each package came with a note, "Saw this and thought of you," or "Remember when you said you wanted to try this?" The gifts felt like breadcrumbs, little reminders that she was still thinking about me, still paying attention to my preferences and needs. I donated most of it to the office break room and asked our receptionist to refuse any future deliveries that weren't work-related. The most disturbing escalation came when she somehow got my parents' address. I was having Sunday dinner with them in Lakewood when my mom casually mentioned that a lovely young woman had stopped by earlier in the week asking about me. She said she was an old friend from college who was in town and wanted to surprise you, my mom explained, passing the mashed potatoes. "Very pretty girl. Olivia, I think?" She asked if you still came for Sunday dinners. My dad looked up from his pot roast. "Didn't you date someone named Olivia? The event planner?" "We broke up a few months ago," I said carefully. "What exactly did she want to know?" "Oh, just catching up. She seemed to know a lot about you, your job, your hobbies. She mentioned that you'd been rock climbing together." My mom smiled. She seemed very interested in staying in touch. I felt a chill run down my spine. My parents lived 40 minutes from downtown Denver in a suburban neighborhood Olivia had visited exactly twice in 3 years of dating. There was no way she just happened to be in the area. "Mom, if she comes by again, please don't tell her anything about me. We didn't end on good terms." My parents exchanged a look. "Should we be concerned, son?" my dad asked. "Just cautious. Don't give her information about my schedule or personal life." The final straw came when Olivia applied for a job at my company. I found out when our HR manager, Linda, mentioned it during a coffee break. "We got an interesting application for the marketing coordinator position," she said. "Someone named Olivia Fletcher. She listed you as a reference." I nearly choked on my coffee. "She what?" "Don't worry, I didn't call you for a reference without checking first. But her resume is actually pretty impressive, and she mentioned in her cover letter that she was familiar with our company culture through you." "Linda, we used to date. We broke up several months ago, and it wasn't amicable. I definitely did not give her permission to use me as a reference." Linda's expression shifted from casual to concerned. "Oh, that's problematic. Should I be worried about this application?" "I'd recommend passing on it," I said. "And maybe flag it with security. She's been showing up at the building without legitimate business reasons." That afternoon, I got a text from Olivia. "Can't believe you sabotaged my job interview. That's a new low, even for you." I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Linda as evidence that my concerns weren't unfounded. But what really drove home how far things had gone was the conversation I had with Ashley that evening. We were at her apartment, making dinner together, when I told her about the job application incident. "Trevor," she said, pausing in her vegetable chopping, "this is stalking. You know that, right? It's just persistent contact." "No, it's stalking. She's tracking your movements, showing up at your workplace, contacting your family, trying to insert herself into your professional life. This isn't normal ex-girlfriend behavior." Ashley had a psychology degree and worked as a therapist when she wasn't teaching climbing. I trusted her professional assessment more than my own desire to downplay the situation. What should I do? Document everything. Keep screenshots of texts, write down incidents with dates and times, maybe even consider filing a police report. It seems extreme. Trevor, what's extreme is her behavior. You're just responding appropriately to protect yourself. That night, I started a Google Doc titled Incident Log and began recording every unwanted contact, every unexpected appearance, every piece of evidence that Olivia wasn't respecting the boundaries of our ended relationship. Reading it all in one place was sobering. What had felt like isolated annoyances suddenly looked like a clear pattern of harassment. I printed out the document and put a copy in my desk drawer at work, just in case. The final confrontation happened on moving day, 6 months after the breakup. I'd finally found a place I wanted to buy, a 2-bedroom condo in Capitol Hill with mountain views and space for a proper home office. Ashley had taken the day off to help me pack the last of my things from the loft Olivia and I had shared, the lease mercifully expiring at the end of the month. We were loading boxes into the moving truck when Olivia appeared in the hallway with Connor in tow, like some kind of twisted cavalry charge. I hadn't seen Connor since the night of Jessica's party, and he looked distinctly uncomfortable, like he'd been dragged there against his better judgment. "Trevor," Olivia said, her voice artificially bright, "what perfect timing. I wanted to talk to you before you disappeared completely." Ashley straightened up from the box she was carrying, giving me a questioning look. I nodded slightly. We discussed this possibility and agreed she should stay if Olivia showed up. "Hey Olivia," I said calmly. "Just finishing up the move. Almost done here." "I can see that." Her eyes flicked over Ashley with barely concealed hostility. "And you must be the climbing instructor. I've heard so much about you." Ashley smiled pleasantly. "All good things, I hope." "Oh, absolutely. Trevor's always been attracted to the athletic type." The passive-aggressive barb hung in the air for a moment before Olivia continued. "I wanted to talk to you about closure, Trevor. I think we owe each other that much after 3 years." I set down the box I was holding. "What kind of closure are you looking for?" "Honest closure. An actual conversation about what went wrong between us instead of this cold shoulder treatment you've been giving me for months." Connor shifted uncomfortably beside her, checking his phone like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I thought we were clear about what went wrong," I said. "You wanted to be friends. I respected that decision." "But you didn't really respect it, did you? You just shut me out completely." "Friends don't ignore each other's calls. Friends don't refuse to help during emergencies. Friends don't treat each other like strangers." Ashley had moved closer, positioned where she could intervene if things escalated. Her presence was calming, a reminder that this drama wasn't the center of my universe anymore. "Olivia, we've had this conversation before. You don't want friendship. You want me to be available whenever you need emotional support while you pursue other relationships. That's not friendship. That's not true." Her voice rose sharply. "I've been trying to maintain a connection with someone who used to be the most important person in my life, and you've been punishing me for being honest about needing space." "Punishing you?" I almost laughed. "I gave you exactly what you asked for. Space. This isn't space, Trevor. This is exile. This is you deciding that I don't deserve basic human decency because I couldn't give you what you wanted." Connor finally spoke up. "Liv, maybe we should go. This doesn't seem productive." She whirled on him. "Don't you dare take his side. You see how he's treating me, right? How cold and cruel he's being." Connor looked at me, then back at her, his expression troubled. "I see someone who's trying to move on with his life." "Move on?" Olivia's voice cracked. "He's not moving on, he's erasing me. 3 years together and he acts like I never existed. Like everything we had meant nothing." "It did mean something," I said quietly. "But it's over. You ended it and you were right to. We weren't good for each other. We could have been. If you just fought for us instead of giving up the second things got complicated. Olivia, you literally told me we were better as friends. What was I supposed to fight for? For us? For what we built together? For the possibility that maybe I was scared and confused and said something I didn't mean. There was the real reason she'd been stalking me, manufacturing emergencies, showing up everywhere I went. She'd expected me to chase her, to prove how much I needed her by refusing to accept her decision. So this whole thing has been a test? I asked. The breakup, the let's be friends speech, all of it? Not a test, she said desperately. I really did need space. But I thought you'd wait for me to figure things out. Ashley made a small sound that might have been sympathy or disgust. That's not how breakups work, she said gently. When someone breaks up with you, they're making a decision. You can't expect the other person to pause their life indefinitely while you decide whether you made a mistake. Olivia turned on her with fury. No one asked for your opinion. This is between me and Trevor. Actually, I said, it's not between us anymore. You made sure of that 6 months ago. So that's it? You're going to let 3 years go because I had a moment of doubt. I'm going to respect the decision you made as an adult. And I'm going to continue building a life that makes me happy. With her. Olivia's voice was flat, defeated. With someone who appreciates what I have to offer, I corrected. Instead of someone who sees me as a backup plan. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the sounds of traffic from the street below. Connor was staring at his shoes, clearly regretting whatever series of decisions had led him to this hallway confrontation. Finally, Olivia played her last card. Fine, she said, tears starting. If that's really how you feel, then I guess there's nothing left to say. But just so you know, Trevor, this is killing me. Watching you move on like I meant nothing is destroying me, and if something happens to me, it's on you. Ashley stepped forward immediately. That's not okay. You can't threaten to hurt yourself to manipulate someone into staying in your life. I'm not threatening anything, Olivia shot back. I'm just telling him the truth about what his cruelty is doing to me. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. What are you doing? Olivia asked, panic creeping into her voice. Calling the crisis hotline. If you're genuinely thinking about hurting yourself, you need professional help, not emotional manipulation. I'm not, she started, then stopped when she realized I was actually making the call. Trevor, hang up the phone. This is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the voice on the other end said. How can I help you? Hi, I'm here with someone who just told me that she's being destroyed by our breakup and implied she might hurt herself. Could you talk to her? I held the phone out to Olivia. No, she said, backing away. I don't need to talk to anyone. I didn't mean it like that. I spoke back into the phone. She's declining to talk, but I wanted to make sure she had access to help if she needed it. After getting some brief advice about warning signs and resources, I hung up. Olivia was staring at me with something that looked like respect mixed with horror. I can't believe you actually called them. I can't believe you thought threatening self-harm was an appropriate way to end a conversation. Connor took her arm gently. Come on, Liv. Let's go home. For once, she didn't resist. As they walked toward the elevator, she turned back one last time. You've changed, Trevor. You used to care about people. I still care, I said. That's why I called for help instead of taking responsibility for your emotional manipulation. The elevator doors closed, and Ashley and I stood in the hallway for a moment, processing what had just happened. Well, she said finally, that was intense. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't be. I'm proud of how you handled it. Calling the crisis line was brilliant. It showed you took her seriously without giving in to the manipulation. We finished loading the truck in relative quiet, both of us ready to put this chapter behind us. As we drove away from the loft for the last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, complete freedom. No more wondering when Olivia would show up, no more analyzing her texts for hidden meanings, no more walking on eggshells around someone else's emotional volatility. I was finally, genuinely moving on. 6 months later, I was living my best life in ways I hadn't even imagined possible during those final months with Olivia. The promotion to senior developer had come through in March, along with a salary bump that let me actually enjoy the condo I'd bought instead of just surviving in it. Ashley and I had moved in together after dating for 8 months, and the difference between living with someone who contributed to your peace versus someone who constantly disrupted it was staggering. We turned the second bedroom into a shared office space where she worked on her therapy practice notes while I handled freelance coding projects. Weekend mornings meant coffee on the balcony, planning climbing trips to El Dorado Canyon, talking about everything and nothing without the underlying tension that had defined my last relationship. I'd started teaching beginner climbing classes at Peak Performance on Saturday mornings, something Ashley had encouraged when she noticed how much I enjoyed helping newer climbers work through their fears and technical challenges. It was rewarding in a way I'd never expected, watching people discover they were capable of more than they'd believed. That's where I first noticed some familiar faces in my classes. Tom worked in marketing at a company downtown and mentioned he'd heard about my teaching through a mutual acquaintance. Sarah was a grad student who'd tried climbing once before with someone who wasn't very patient and wanted to give it another shot with proper instruction. It wasn't until my 4th week teaching that I realized they both knew Olivia and had heard her version of our relationship story. I have to say, Sarah mentioned after class while we were putting away equipment, "You're nothing like what I expected based on what Olivia told people." I paused in coiling the rope I was holding. What did she tell people? That you were controlling and emotionally manipulative. That you couldn't handle her needing space and became vindictive when she tried to set boundaries. Tom laughed, but not unkindly, which honestly never made sense when we saw how happy and healthy you seem now. People who are manipulative don't usually teach patience and safety to beginners for free on their weekends. I thought about how to respond to that. 6 months ago, I might have felt the need to defend myself or correct the record. Now it just seemed sad that Olivia was still defining herself by our failed relationship instead of building something new. Breakups are hard, I said simply. People process them differently. What I didn't mention was the wedding invitation that had arrived the previous week. Elegant cardstock, expensive printing, my name carefully handwritten in calligraphy, Olivia Fletcher and Connor Walsh request the pleasure of your company. The ceremony was scheduled for June 15th at some vineyard in Palisade, about 4 hours from Denver. I'd stared at the invitation for a long time, trying to figure out what response she was hoping for. Shock? Jealousy? Desperate attempts to win her back before she married someone else? Instead, I'd simply filled out the RSVP card with "unable to attend" and mailed it back without any additional message. No congratulations, no questions about the sudden engagement, no acknowledgement that this felt like yet another manipulation attempt. Ashley found the whole thing hilarious. "She's really committed to this fantasy that you're sitting around pining for her," she said, examining the invitation over breakfast. "Does she know you helped me pick out furniture last weekend?" "I don't think our actual life together factors into her narrative," I replied, spreading jam on my toast. "She needs me to be the heartbroken ex who can't move on. Otherwise, she has to face the fact that I'm genuinely happier without her." The truth was, I'd almost forgotten about Olivia until that invitation arrived. My days were full of work I enjoyed, relationships that energized me instead of draining me, hobbies that brought me genuine satisfaction. When I thought about my future now, it was filled with possibilities Ashley and I were building together, places we wanted to travel, maybe getting a dog, the climbing gym we'd talked about opening once we'd saved enough capital. Olivia wasn't part of that future, not as a presence or an absence. She was just part of my past, like high school or my first apartment. 2 weeks after the RSVP deadline, I got a text from Connor, "Hey man, hope this isn't weird but wanted you to know the wedding's off. Found out Olivia was still tracking your social media and had been lying about a lot of things. Thanks for not responding to her games, it helped me see what I was dealing with. Sorry for any trouble she caused you." I showed the message to Ashley, who just shook her head. That poor guy. He probably thought he was getting someone who'd learned from her mistakes. "Maybe she will learn from them," I said, though I wasn't particularly optimistic. People have to want to change. That weekend, Ashley and I were at the farmer's market, the same one where Olivia had ambushed me with her fake interest in healthy eating almost a year earlier. We were examining heirloom tomatoes when I spotted a familiar figure across the plaza. Olivia was sitting alone on a bench, scrolling through her phone with the kind of desperate intensity one recognized from our last few months together. She looked smaller somehow, less polished than I remembered. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the same sweats she used to save for sick days. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy. Not regret, not longing, just recognition that this was someone who'd been in my life for a significant period and was clearly struggling. "Is that her?" Ashley asked, following my gaze. "Yeah. Should we go say hi?" I considered it for a moment. The old me might have felt obligated to check on her, to offer some kind of closure or reconciliation. But that impulse came from a place of guilt and conditioning, not genuine care. Olivia had made her choices repeatedly over the past year, and those choices had led her here. "No," I said, turning back to the tomato vendor. "She has my number if she really needs something. And she has other people in her life who can help her figure things out." Ashley squeezed my hand. "Good answer." We bought our vegetables and walked home through the late morning sunshine, planning the dinner we'd cook together that evening. Behind us, Olivia remained on that bench, scrolling through whatever digital rabbit hole was consuming her attention. I didn't look back. The last I heard about Olivia was through Jessica, who mentioned at a holiday party that she'd moved to Portland and was working for a different event planning company. "She seems to be doing better," Jessica said. "More focused on her own life instead of." She trailed off diplomatically. "Good for her," I said, and meant it. By then Ashley and I were engaged ourselves, planning a simple ceremony at the climbing gym where we'd met. No drama, no manipulation, no games. Just two people who'd found each other and decided to build something together based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine compatibility. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at someone who hurt you. Sometimes it's simply living well, loving deeply, and proving to yourself that you deserved better all along. I got better, and I never looked back.